Trying to learn and understand everything about bullet ballistics and environmental factors that affect your bullet as it travels to longer range targets can be intimidating. At least it was for me when I was first introduced to long range shooting. Fortunately, there's an app for that, and we're going to explore the app I use, how I use it for hunting, and how I used it to create this quick reference dope chart on the side of my rifle. I hope you stick around. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'll start off with saying I'm not a long-range shooting expert by any stretch of the imagination. I was introduced to long-range hunting about 12 years ago while assisting the Knee-Step Foundation on a hunt with some veterans. The ranch we were at had a range that stretched out to 1,200 yards right off the back patio of the lodge. There happened to be a couple of Marine snipers that were there with the ranch owner, and they were shooting at ranges from 400 to 1,200. Those distances seem crazy to me because at the time where I deer hunted and the equipment I used, a 30-30 with a fixed power scope, 200 yards was extreme long range. I watched them shoot for a while, and the ranch owner invited me to try hitting the 1,200 yard silhouette target with his rifle. I remember there was about a 15-mile-an-hour crosswind from right to left. I hit it with the second pull of the trigger, which might sound impressive. At least I was pretty proud, but the reality was they did the hard work figuring out the dope, and I was just the trigger man. I'm sure a lot of you already know, but DOPE is an acronym that stands for Data on Previous Engagements. When I got on the gun to make that 1,200 yard shot, the elevation and windage adjustments were already dialed on the scope, so all I had to do was hold dead on and squeeze the trigger, the easy part. All the same, I was excited to hit the target at that distance and wanted to learn more about bullet ballistics, specifically as it relates to hunting. There are multiple tools at our disposal to help us understand ballistics, and really, they do all the work for us. One is a Kestrel. This device measures atmospheric conditions and calculates ballistic data for precise elevation and windage adjustments. A Kestrel device is probably as accurate as you're going to get, but number one, it's not cheap, and two, it's not quick to set up. It's minutes, not seconds. Having said that, I love it. I can do a deeper dive into my Kestrel device and how it works. If that's something y'all would like to see, just let me know down in the comments. But let's get into the ballistic apps that you can download to your phone. I didn't realize how many there were until I was doing some research preparing for this video. There are a lot of them. One that caught my attention while prepping for this video is Applied Ballistics. I've downloaded it and I'm going to mess around with it to see how I like it. The one that I've used for the last 7 or so years is SBC Lite. I haven't had any problems with it, at least I didn't think I did, but it turns out I've been paying for the Pro version, which is $10 annually, and haven't been getting all the features that were supposed to be included. So if you use this app, don't pay for it. Use the free version because you should be able to get all the information you need out of it. So let's get into the setup of a gun and ammo combination. All right, I'm doing a screen recording so you can see exactly what I'm looking at. So as I open this app, it comes up to the version that I have. So you can see there's a check mark by the Pro version, which is what I paid for, although I'm not getting some of those features, and I'll show you what we're talking about when we get to that point. But so that's showing me what I have. And then if I click on ammunition, which is that first column in that lower darker area, that dark border at the bottom, it shows the last ammo and rifle combination that I use. So on the top is the ammo, which is the 6.5 Creedmoor max point ammo. You can see the caliber, 6.5 millimeter, the weight of the bullet, the muzzle velocity, the ballistic coefficient, and down below is the rifle that I paired it with. So that is the X-Bolt 2 Hunter Composite in 6.5 Creedmoor using the MP max point ammo. You can see that to get the accurate ballistics, you need the sight height and we need the zero range of that rifle. So let's go ahead and set up this rifle. I've taken it out of here so we can go through the setup again. So the first thing we're going to do is click on that gun at the top. We're going to hit the plus sign here, and we're going to name this rifle. It's the X-Bolt Mountain Pro Long Range. So I usually just acronym them to save space here. And then I want to give a dash, and I'm going to name it 6.8W for Western, another dash, and then the ammo that this gun likes, which is the Long Range Pro Hunter. All right, sight height. This is the distance from the center of the bore to the center of the scope, and one way you can measure it is with a caliper that I should have had out already. But if you don't have a caliper, you can just measure it with a ruler or a tape measure, whatever. So we're going to go from the center of the scope to the center of the barrel, center of the bore. I'm going to try to get it as close as I can to the center there, and I already know what this is. This one is 2 inches, so I'm going to put that in this sight height area. So if I go 2 inches, and then we're done there, and then our zero range, this one's already in there at 200 yards. And 200 yards is my preferred zero distance, me personally. I did a video on that. I think it was called Choosing the Perfect Distance, the Perfect Distance to Zero Your Rifle and Hunting. I'll put a link somewhere in here and you can watch that video if you want, but I think 200 yards is the best distance to zero a hunting rifle. So we're going to save that. All right, and then I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to go back. All right, so let's select that rifle. So we need to select it. I'm going to go back and I selected it. So there you can see it's down there at the bottom. The X-Bolt Mountain Pro Long Range 6.8 Western with the Long Range Pro Hunter ammo. 2-inch sight height, zero range is 200 yards. So let's go to add the ammo, and that's that little ammo button on the top right of my phone, right under my battery. Okay, so the factory load, I know it's not in there. There are some factory loads that are in there. I think Federal has quite a few, Hornady, Winchester, but Browning is not in there. I guess it's too new, and probably because this app hasn't been updated in over 2 years. It's probably why these features aren't working, is they aren't updating this app. So I would say that's it. So I always just enter everything hand loads. Even if it's already in the system, I'd rather do it hand loads anyway. So I'm going to hit that plus sign, and we're going to name this the Browning Long Range Pro Hunter. I will go ahead and put 6.8 Western, but that will be in the millimeters there anyway. All right, so now we go to caliber. So you can select inches or millimeters. So because this is a 6.8 Western, I could put 0.277, but I'm going to put 6.8 millimeters because that's the name of this caliber, name of this cartridge. Our bullet weight. So here's where you pull out your box and see what you've got here. So this is a 175 grain bullet. We need our muzzle velocity. So I went and shot, okay, so first let me start with, I made my dope chart and I shot this rifle with this app using the muzzle velocity on the box. I didn't have a Garmin until recently, like earlier this summer. So I had to just go with what was on the box. It turns out this rifle shot pretty accurately to the muzzle velocity. I shot it yesterday and the average was 28.36 or something like that, I think. But it was right at the advertised velocity on here, which is 28.35. So we're going to input that there. So if you don't have a Garmin or something to get your bullet speed, go with the muzzle velocity on here. If this were a 22-inch barrel, I might put in there 2800 when we start fine-tuning it, but usually just start with the advertised muzzle velocity. And then we're going to input our G1 BC. So with this rifle, or with this ammo, it is 0.617. Done. And then we're going to save that. and then we're going to select it. There we go. So now you can see on my screen that I've got the Browning Long Range Pro Hunter and 6.8 Western as my ammo. We've got all the information. It's a 6.8 millimeter, 175 bullet weight, grain bullet weight, the muzzle velocity, 2835 feet per second, ballistic coefficient, and I got all that off the box. And then we've got our rifle set up in here. So now we can go to the next tab over, which is our environment. So with this, you can set up your wind direction. If it's a straight north wind, that would be a 0. All right, you can plug in your wind velocity, whatever that may be. Most of the time, I would use my app, just my weather app in the area I was at, and just kind of guesstimate from there. It's just kind of judgment. But if we just do, well, let's just put back in 10 miles an hour on our wind velocity. You can put in your temperature. Scroll that down a little bit. And here in Missouri today, it's about 85 degrees. Barometric pressure, again, that's stuff I get off my weather app that you can input there. Your altitude. So depending on where you're hunting, there's plenty of altitude apps that you can get. In fact, I think the one I use is called Altitude. So here in Missouri, I'm at 500 feet above sea level. Speed, target speed, I've never put anything in there. Your target azimuth, azimuth, that's how you say that, I think. That is, you can see me spinning this, so that's the direction we're shooting. So a lot of times what I do is I'll use my compass, and I can see that if I'm shooting straight ahead of me, I'm at 273 degrees. So let's go back to here, and I can do my target azimuth as 200, and what was that? 276, yeah, let's go 276. 276 degrees. So I'm shooting almost due west. All right, so then if we do a north wind, so I can move this, you see how I can move this flag around? If we've got a straight north coming out of the north, see that would be pointing to the north. So the wind would be traveling through that cone, and I would have a straight north wind. Something like that right there. So if that's our, let's just say that is our environmental factors, now let's go to our ballistics. At the top of the ballistic information, we've got our equipment on the left. We've got our 6.8 millimeter with a 175 grain bullet, the bullet speed, our ballistic coefficient. And then we get down into the rifle part, the bottom two, which is a 2-inch sight height. Our rifle is zeroed at 200 yards. On the right is our environmental factors: wind direction, wind velocity, temperature, and so on down the list. Barometric pressure, altitude, and your target azimuth. Azimuth. All right, so then we can look at, I've got our ballistic information set to 25-yard increments, and you can go as low as 5 yards. It's just a lot to thumb through to get your exact yardage and your ballistic information, but you can go to that. I've got it set at 25 yards for this example. So if we look at 200 yards, that's where we're zeroed. It shows you the muzzle, or not the muzzle velocity, but the velocity of the bullet there at 200 yards. If we just work across, we've got 2545.2 is our bullet velocity at 200 yards. The time that it takes to get there is 0.22 seconds. Our energy at 200 yards, 2517. You can see our drop in inches at 200 yards. We're zeroed at 200, so it would be 0. Our drop in MOA, again 0. Now the wind deflection. So if we go back to our environmentals here, we can see that we're shooting to the west. We've got almost a straight north wind is what I've got set up in here at 10 miles an hour. Go back to our ballistics so you can see the wind in inches. It's going to drift. The bullet is going to drift to the left 2.1 inches at 200 yards with those conditions loaded. Wind MOA is 1. So if your scope this scope on the Leupold VX5. I think I have the TMOA reticle in here, so it has hash marks on the windage crosshair. So 1 MOA with the scope at its full power on 20, because this is a second focal plane scope, for those hash marks to line up, the manual says needs to be at the most high power. So I am 1 MOA, so I need to hold on the left hash mark. I need to aim right, hold on the left hash mark, the first left hash mark, which would be 1 MOA. That's how much wind drift I've got. So let's go down to 300 yards and take a look at that. We'll go muzzle velocity. You can see that, time in the air, energy, but let's look at drop, because that starts to be the most important thing, that and your wind drift. We're at almost 7 inches of drop from 200 to 300 yards. So if you're just holding your reticle, you're not dialing your scope, you're gonna have to aim high, almost 7 inches to hit your target. The drop in MOA is 2.2, so that's when we talk about dialing your scope here, dialing your elevation. So this is an MOA, so it's 1/4 inch MOA. So if I'm going to dial it up, it says my drop in MOA is 2.2. So I'm going to turn this scope to the number 2, and then there's 4 clicks. It's a 1/4 inch MOA, or 1/4 MOA I should say. So 1 click past 2 is going to be 2.25. That's as close as I'm going to get to that 300 dial, is 2.25. So I would turn my elevation dial to 2.25, hold that on, and squeeze the trigger. If there were no wind, which this is going to drift almost 5 inches to the left, because we got a right to left wind. And on the MOA, if you just didn't have hash marks on your reticle like this Leupold VX5 does, you would just have to aim to the right 5 inches. In my case, it says my wind MOA deflection is 1.55 MOA. So every hash mark, my cousin texted me, every hash mark is 1 MOA. So I would have to hold between the first and the second hash mark on the left to adjust for a right to left drift. If we go down to 500, you can take a look at that as well, but you can see your wind drift is a heck of a lot more, and your drop is a heck of a lot more. Almost a 40-inch drop in inches at 500 yards, and our MOA drop is 7.62. So in this case, I would dial to 7, and then I would go between either 2 or 3 clicks past 7. So I'd either go to 7.5 or 7.75. But wind drift, let's look at wind drift. You're going to have 14 inches of wind drift from right to left at 500 yards, and then our wind MOA is 2.74. So I would hold almost to my third hash mark to the left on my elevation my windage reticle. Let's move on to, okay, and this is the target. So this is what I've been paying for that I'm not getting. So on this here, this will tell you what it does. It gives me the reticle. I could select the TMOA reticle by Leupold and select my scope, everything. This one was in there. And then it would tell me where my holdover marks were if I weren't dialing my scope. So that is a feature that this app is not giving me with my Pro version that I purchased. So that's why I wouldn't even bother with it. You can do everything I did with the free version. If we go over here to settings, then you can look at your language, elevation units. I'm a MOA guy, but you can see here there's mil in there if you're a mil person, and then there's also 1/8 inch MOA scopes, or 1/8 inch MOA clicks if you do have a 1/8 scope. I used to have one actually, and there are quite a few half MOA scopes out there also, but again, I'm a 1/4 inch MOA on all my scopes. And then you can go down caliber. You can see inches to millimeters, your weight differences, your distance, maybe you're use meters instead of yards. And here's your range increments. I'm gonna click on that one. You can see I've got it selected at 25. You could do 5, 10, 20, 25, 50, or 100. 25 seems to work just fine for me. But anyways, that is all the features of this app. So using an app-based ballistic calculator with the rifle and ammunition already preloaded, and then when you get out to your hunting spot, you can input all the environmentals. It's going to be much faster than using the Kestrel because it's just a matter of opening up the ballistics tab and scrolling through here to find your yardage and select it, and then it highlights it so you know your holdover marks or your elevation dials, your windage adjustments, whatever the case may be. But sometimes things happen so quick that you don't have access to this. So that's why I've created a dope chart for my rifle that I just taped on here. So on here I've got my rifle, the Browning 6.8 Western. I've got 3 columns. I want to know my range, and that ranges in 25 yard increments, and it goes from 250 yards out to 700. I start at 250 because at 250 is when I start thinking about either holding up or starting to dial. Anything in under 250 yards, I can leave it on my 0 at 200 yards and just hold dead on. Out to 250, I start thinking about holdovers. So if we just take one for example here, well, my column. So I've got the range, I've got the drop in inches in the middle column. I would use that if I don't have time to dial in. So let's just say I've got a shot at 350 yards. I know my drop in inches is 13 inches. If things are happening too quick, because you never know hunting, as you guys know, I just know that I've got to hold up almost a foot, 13 inches, and squeeze the trigger if I'm not dialing. If I do have time to dial, it's a 3.5 MOA dial. So I'm just dialing to 3.5 on my elevation turret. Same thing, if we have a 500 yard shot, and that's about as far as I would shoot in really good conditions, almost perfect conditions for elk, a larger size animal, I might go out to 600 under the absolute perfect conditions. But let's take 500 yards for instance. My drop in inches is 40 inches. So I'm holding above. I'm really not going to, when I say perfect conditions, it's not going to be a quick shot because I'm not going to guess at 40 inches. I'm definitely going to dial my scope, and I'm going to dial it to 7.5. So 7.5 on my elevation adjustment, hold dead on and squeeze the trigger. As far as the windage, I'm just kind of guessing. Just getting a feel for it as you practice and start to understand your rifle, you start to get an idea on how far you need to hold over and whatever it may be. So this chart, again, it's quick reference. It's the fastest way to reference it. If I'm sitting there over a bear hunting in Wyoming, over a bait pile, and I'm just waiting for a bear to walk up, that's when I'm using my Kestrel, because I've got all the time in the world to just sit there and wait, and then it's just giving me the data right in front of me. If I'm elk hunting and I'm sitting over, like I do in Colorado, I'm kind of sitting over a oak brush and some alfalfa fields and we're kind of moving along, I'm going to probably use the app and just get an idea of where we're at, and so we've got time, the elk are feeding down there. But if something is moving through quickly and I don't have time to mess with the app, I'm going to get the range. I've got my gun right here. As I'm setting it up, I can quickly glance over and see what kind of holdovers and elevation dials that I may want to use. That's all right here, easily accessible. That's the basics of how I use the SBC Light Ballistic app for hunting. Like I said earlier, I'm very intrigued by the Applied Ballistic app, so I'm going to give it a try and see how I like it. If you guys are currently using a ballistic app, which one are you currently using and how do you like it? Let me know down in the comments because I'd like to check it out also. That'll do it for this video. I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you next time.